things I did before, told you how I used to be. Would you go along with someone like me? If you knew my story word for word, had all of my history, would you go along with someone like me?
Man, if I'm sleeping in class, I should probably think of something productive to dream about. I mean, Mr. Haskell's definitely going to ask me what I learned when I wake up if I was sleeping the whole time. And I gotta think of something to tell him, right? So, I'll tell him friction. I was learning about friction while I was sleeping, because in my dreams, friction's even there. I mean, I like to dream about snowboarding, because it's my favorite thing to do. And friction's right there on the mountain with you. Friction is defined as a force that opposes motion on something sliding on the ground. So, I guess there's friction between my snowboard and the snow. There's friction between my boots and my bindings. There's friction between my socks and the inside of my boots even. Friction's everywhere. It's not the most powerful force in the world, but it is there, and you feel it in everything you do. I mean, if there was no friction, then it would be kind of hard to walk, because it would be like you're constantly figure skating or ice skating or whatever. And I guess that would be fun until you slip and fall and crack your head open. It's all fun and games till someone gets a concussion. Turns out the force of friction is pretty easy to find too, with a couple little math equations. I mean, first, if you don't have the normal force, which is the force that the ground applies back to you, then you have to find that, and that should equal the same as the force of gravity that you apply on the ground. So then you take that and you plug it into an equation that says the force of friction is equal to mu times normal force. And like I said, normal force is just the force that the ground applies back to you, and mu is the coefficient of friction, and that can be found on your reference table. It's on the bottom right hand corner of the front page. So yeah, since I'm just sleeping and dreaming a little bit here and talking in my dream, which is kind of weird, maybe I'll try and do an equation or something, do something a little bit useful for once. I'll try and find the force of friction acting between me on my snowboard and West Mountain. So it turns out that finding the force of friction is actually a pretty easy thing to do. All you gotta do is just remember the equation that we have. Force of friction is equal to mu times normal force. And just remember that the normal force is equal to the force of gravity. We can find our force of gravity that we apply on the Earth by using the equation Fg equals ma. M stands for mass, which for a human is about 75 kilograms. And A is equal to the acceleration due to gravity, which on Earth is 9.8 meters per second squared. So remembering that force of gravity is equal to normal force, we're going to multiply those two numbers together, and we end up with 735 newtons. So then we can take those numbers and plug them into our force of friction equation, which again is mu times normal force. It looks like this. We got force of friction is equal to mu, which again is on your reference table in the bottom right hand corner. And in our scenario, it's equal to 0.05, which is under wet ski on snow. We multiply that by the normal force that we found, which was 735 newtons. Again, after we multiply those two together, we end up with our frictional force, which is equivalent to 36.75 newtons. And that's that.
Boom, boom. This is gonna feel real good, alright? Most dope. Everybody please put a thumb in the air.
Alright, so here I am in my dream. Mr. Haskell's voice put me to sleep once again. So I think I'm gonna do some drifting then in my goofy car. So since I am in physics class, I probably should dream about something physics related. How about friction? That sounds pretty easy, and it has to do with drifting. So what's friction? I think friction is a force that opposes motion when two surfaces slide against each other. So I mean, you can find friction pretty much anywhere. I mean, you do it all the time. I mean, when you walk, when you brush your teeth, when you write, shave, and it's even seen here while I'm doing donuts in my car. So where is friction seen while I'm messing around in my car? Well, that's easy. It's right between the tires and the asphalt. So I mean, if there was a lot of friction, I wouldn't be able to do any of these goofy things that I'm doing right now. And if there was no friction at all, I'd probably be crashing into that building or that pole. Or I probably wouldn't be driving at all. So I mean, if you're ever home making friction or something, and you want to figure out how much friction you're making, check this equation out. Force of friction is equal to mu times normal force. Mu, yeah, mu. I said mu, just like the Pokemon. So I probably should definitely figure out how much friction is going on between my car and the ground. So how about we give this puppy a shot? Alright, so here I'm going to find the force of friction between my car and the asphalt. And there's an equation for that. It's force of friction equals mu times normal force. So to find the normal force, we have to find the force of gravity, which is equal to the normal force. So to find the force of gravity, there's an equation for that. Force of gravity equals m, which is mass, times a, which is acceleration. The mass of my car is 1,500 kilograms, while the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. So if I do a little bit of calculations, that means the force of gravity applied on my car is 14,700 newtons. So now we know the normal force, we can plug that into our force of friction equation and figure some stuff out. So to complete this equation, you have to find mu, which is found in the reference table, and in this scenario it's 0.53. Then you take that and you multiply by the normal force, which is 14,700 newtons. So after doing a little math, I have come to the conclusion that the force of friction between my tires and the asphalt is 7,791 newtons.
Did we sleep that whole class?
Dude, I think we did.
I started dreaming about snowboarding and stuff.
I was dreaming about drifting in a car.
And friction. I started dreaming about friction too. But about friction.
Buzz.
I gotta go.